I was about to cross the street when I saw my ex standing there with three little boys who looked exactly like me. That is not a metaphor. They had my eyebrows, my crooked tooth, even my stupid habit of tugging at their shirt collar when they got nervous. 6 years after I broke her heart over the phone to chase a job, I realized in one glance that I might have walked away from four people, not one. It was late afternoon outside my company's headquarters in the middle of New York. I had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal, suit-sharp phone pressed to my ear, pretending to care about numbers that stopped meaning anything a long time ago. I stepped up to the crosswalk, half listening to my VP, when something on the opposite corner pulled me out of my own head like a slap. It wasn't a billboard or a car. It was a woman in worn jeans and a plain white t-shirt, backpack slung over one shoulder, leaning on the traffic pole like her feet hurt. Around her, three boys, same height, same age, maybe six, identical, bouncing in circles, arguing about whose turn it was to pick the music in the Uber. One of them tugged at the neck of his shirt twice in a row, that dumb habit I've had since I was a kid, and my stomach just fell through the floor. Then she turned her head, and I saw her face. Julia. The only woman I have ever really loved, the one I left behind, with a cold call from an airport lounge. I literally told her, long distance won't work for where I'm going, listened to her choke on a sob, then hit end, and blocked her on everything. I told myself it was necessary, that my career had to come first, that she would move on, and I was doing us both a favor. Standing there at that crosswalk staring at her with three boys who looked like someone had copy-pasted my DNA, I understood exactly what I had done. The light turned green, people started walking, and I stepped into the street without even looking. A bike courier cursed at me. I didn't hear half of it. I hung up on my VP mid-sentence and walked straight toward her. She saw me coming and I watched her whole body change in 1 second. Shoulders up, eyes hard, hands reaching for her kids like she was bracing for impact. I stopped right in front of her, close enough to see the little lines around her eyes I hadn't put there, and my mouth just said her name, Julia. It came out like I'd been holding it for 6 years. Cole, she answered, steady, no smile, no tremor, no, oh my God, it's you, just my name with every ounce of history stuffed inside it. The boys stared at me, three hazel-eyed copies trying to figure out who the guy in the expensive suit was. One leaned in and whispered, not as quiet as he thought, Mom, who is that man? She didn't answer. I couldn't stop looking at them, at the way one squinted in the sun, with his whole face, at the way another had his socks bunched around his ankles, like he'd yanked them on himself, at the exact shape of their jawline that I see in the mirror every morning. I felt my mouth moving before my brain caught up. Are they? The word mine got stuck somewhere between my ego and my guilt, but it didn't matter. We both knew how that sentence ended. Julia's jaw tightened. Her eyes shone for half a second, but she didn't nod. Didn't shake her head. She just gave me this look, this quiet, furious look that said, "You don't get even that answer for free." A gray Honda slid up to the curb, Uber logo glowing. The driver took one look at the scene and wisely minded his own business. Julia opened the back door, her voice suddenly soft, as she herded the boys inside. "Careful with your feet. Scoot over, give your brother some space." She shut the door gently, then turned back to me, and for the first time I saw the anger and the sadness sitting side by side in her face. No scene, no yelling, no slap, just that look. And then she got in the car and left. I stayed on the sidewalk like somebody had hit pause on my life while the rest of the city kept going. Horns, footsteps, snippets of conversation, and all I could see was that car pulling away with three little strangers who looked like they had borrowed my face. That night, my penthouse felt like a museum, big glass windows, expensive furniture, everything perfectly placed, absolutely lifeless. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the AC humming, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw those boys, and the way Julia's hand tightened on their wrists when she saw me coming. I tried to tell myself it might be a coincidence, that maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. But if you've ever looked at a kid and known instantly they were yours, you know that's not something you can talk yourself out of. Around 5 in the morning, I gave up on sleep, walked barefoot across cold wood floors, picked up my phone and scrolled to her name. I had blocked her on every app back then, deleted every photo, every message thread, like I was scrubbing her out of my story, but I never deleted her number. I stared at Julia R. on my screen for a long time, typed a text, erased it, typed another, erased that too, then realized there was nothing I could send that wouldn't feel ridiculous. So I did what I usually do when I don't know what to say. I went and did something instead. I had my driver take me back to that same block in Queens, the one I hadn't set foot on in 6 years, and I sat there like an idiot in a black car watching the front door. An older woman was sweeping the sidewalk. I got out, tried not to look like a crazy rich guy stalking the building, and asked, "Excuse me, does a woman named Julia live here with 3 boys?" She eyed me up and down, took in the suit, the car, the whole picture, and her mouth softened just a little. "She did," the woman said, "but she already left, took the boys to school." I thanked her, got back in the car, and leaned my head against the window, watching normal life happen around a building I had never even asked the address of while we were together. That afternoon, I went back and waited again. This time, when I saw 3 matching backpacks coming down the sidewalk and Julia's tired stride behind them, I got out before I could talk myself out of it. She saw me, and instantly her hand went to the nearest little shoulder. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice low. She scanned the street, spotted a bench by a newsstand, walked the boys over and crouched in front of them. "Sit here. Play a game. I'm right there where I can see. You don't move from this spot." They nodded, already absorbed in whatever she handed them, and she came back toward me with her arms crossed like a shield. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, and it came out more like an accusation than I meant it to. She gave this tiny, disbelieving laugh. "You're serious, Julia? If they're mine, I had a right to know. Could have called, texted something." She took a slow breath, eyes never leaving mine. "You broke up with me from JFK. Cole, you remember that, right? You said there was a once-in-a-lifetime offer in London, that you couldn't afford emotional distractions. She even put air quotes around it, and then you blocked me on everything before your plane even took off. I tried for a week. I called, I emailed, I DM'd, and every door slammed in my face. So I did what I've been doing since then. I took care of myself. They're my kids, too. I pushed, because I didn't know what else to grab onto." "No," she said quietly. "They are my kids because for 6 years I was the one sitting up at 3 a.m. with 3 fevers and 1 paycheck. I was the one in that hospital when Leo couldn't breathe from an allergic reaction. I was the one choosing between paying rent and buying them sneakers that actually fit. You were a name I couldn't even say out loud without wanting to throw up. It stung because it was true, and I didn't have a speech ready for that. I'm here now," I said, feeling how weak it sounded. "I want to know them, to help, to be something." Her eyes softened for a heartbeat at that word, then went hard again. "I don't trust you," she said, and there was no drama in it, just fact. "And I am not letting 3 little boys get attached to a man who might decide they are too much of a distraction the next time a bigger deal shows up. If you really want to be in their lives, you're going to have to prove it. And it won't be with money or gifts or lawyers. It will be with time and consistency. You know what I mean? She didn't wait for my answer. She just went back to the bench, gathered up the boys, and left me standing there under a flickering streetlight, with nothing but that word echoing in my head, prove it. When I don't know what to feel, I work. That's my default. So I went back to my office, closed the door, and called my assistant Mason. I need you to find everything you can about a woman named Julia Reynolds, Queens, 3 kids, all boys, I said. He didn't ask why, just nodded that efficient nod he has, and got to it. That night, there was a folder on my desk, thick with printouts, and I opened it like I was tearing open my own indictment. Substitute teacher at a public elementary school. Small 2-bedroom rental, 3 boys enrolled in the same first-grade class, no father listed on any school form. Birth certificates. 3 of them all same date, 6 years ago, mother Julia Reynolds, father blank. And then 1 hospital record highlighted by Mason emergency room, age 3, anaphylactic reaction. Family history, mother and unknown father carry same allergy. I have the same allergy, had it my whole life. Reading that line hit different. In that moment, I wasn't seeing court documents. I was seeing a scared 3-year-old in an ER with a woman holding his hand, and no one on the other side of the bed. I went home, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't proud of who I saw in the mirror. A week later, I was at a lawyer's office, sitting at a polished wooden table instead of my own. If they're yours biologically, he said, we can file for a paternity test. The court orders it. The lab confirms it. Then we move toward custody or visitation, depending on what you want. I want what's fair for them, I said. And even I heard how strange that sounded coming from me. The guy who had never cared about fair, just possible. But I don't want a war with their mother. He looked me dead in the eye. Sometimes war happens even when you don't want it. But if you're serious, we start with the test. So we did. A stranger handed Julia a white envelope at her door, and I know from the way she looked at me later that she felt like the ground had opened up underneath her. The day of the test at the lab, she walked in carrying 2 boys and dragging the third, all of them wide-eyed. The nurse did her best to turn cheek swabs into some kind of game, and then it was my turn. Sitting there in a cold, white room with a cotton swab in my mouth, watching my reflection in a stainless steel cabinet, I realized how insane it is that a man needs paperwork to confirm what his gut already knows. 10 days later, the lab called, emailed the report, and I scrolled straight to the bottom, past all the charts and genetic markers to the one line that mattered. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I had expected relief, maybe some weird pride, something dramatic. What I felt was a weight land on my chest, heavy but solid. There it was, in black and white, no room to imagine I was wrong. I had 3 sons. In court, the judge read the same line, looked at Julia, looked at me, and said, given the history of absence and the current tension, we will start with supervised visits at a family center. The goal is the best interest of the children. Translation, you don't get to just show up and play hero, you start in the shallow end like everyone else. The first time I walked into that visitation room, my hands were sweating, like I was about to pitch to my toughest investor. Foam mats on the floor, shelves of used toys, a couch that had seen better days, and a counselor sitting behind a 2-way mirror with a clipboard. Julia brought the boys to the door. They each held a drawing. She handed them to the counselor and said, give these to their father. Not Dad, not Cole, just their father, like she was testing how the words felt in her mouth. When they came in, Leo ran straight to the toy bin. Mason scouted the room like he was planning an escape route, and Isaiah just stood in front of me and stared. You look like me, he said finally. Yeah, I smiled. I noticed that. Do you know how to tell stories? He asked. I'm only staying if there's stories and snacks. I can do both, I said, pulling a worn children's book out of my bag, with a bag of gummy bears. These were my favorite when I was your age. My grandpa used to give me one every time I passed a grade. Deal is one gummy for every question you ask. That's a weird deal, Mason said, already grabbing the bag, but I'll take it. We sat on the floor, and I read badly, stumbling over silly voices, stopping every few lines to answer questions like, "Do you have a dog, and why is your watch so shiny?" And then out of nowhere, Isaiah quietly asked, "Why weren't you there when we were babies?" That one sank all the way down. I took a breath, looked him in the eye, and said, "Because I made a selfish choice. I thought my job was the most important thing in the world, and I didn't want anything to slow me down. I was wrong. If I could go back and change it, I would, but I can't, so all I can do is be here now and keep showing up if you'll let me." He studied my face like he was trying to decide if that was enough, then handed me one of his gummy bears. "You answered, so you get one too." You know what, that moment mattered more to me than any award I've ever gotten. While those visits were slowly turning me into some version of a real father, there was someone else who hated every second of it. Ryan, one of the teachers at the boys' school, the guy I had seen giving them rides and carrying their backpacks. The guy who had been standing next to Julia in the hallway more times than I could count. From his point of view, he'd been there for 6 years while I was gone, and now I was back stepping into a story he thought he was part of. I didn't know how deep his resentment ran until the day someone sent an anonymous tip to a national gossip site, complete with my name, my net worth, the court documents, and a grainy photo of me walking into the visitation center. The headline was "Brutal Convenience Dad Billionaire Cole Sawyer Acknowledges Secret Triplets After 6 Years," and the article painted me like some PR-obsessed villain trying to clean up my image before an IPO. They called Julia a brave single mom, which she is, but they also splashed details about the boys' school and neighborhood everywhere. Reporters showed up at the gate, stuck microphones in her face, shouted questions at children who just wanted to play tag at recess. She had to sneak out the back door with them. Parents whispered. The principal pulled her into the office, maybe take some time off until this calms down, like she had asked for any of it. When she saw the article, she thought it was me. Of course she did. Who else had something to gain from getting out ahead of the story? She called me shaking. "Did you do this to us, Cole?" "No," I said, and I swear, my voice has never been clearer. I would never put our boys in the middle of a circus like that. I'm already the villain in half their comments. I can live with that, but I am not feeding them to the wolves. She didn't say she believed me, she just hung up. What she didn't know was that my assistant Mason had already set up a little digital trap after the first leak tracing, where certain emails were coming from. A couple of sleepless nights later, he walked into my office with his laptop. "I found it," he said. Turns out the anonymous email to the gossip site came straight from the school's staff Wi-Fi, from a logged-in user named R. Allen. Ryan. That was the twist I didn't see coming. I could have taken it straight to the press, flipped the narrative in my favor, but I've learned that just because you can win a war publicly doesn't mean your kids will survive the fallout. So I asked Julia to meet me, just us, no lawyers, no kids. We sat in a tiny conference room at a co-working space, and I slid the laptop across the table. "This is where the leak came from," I said, "the school network staff room, and this is the login." She stared at the screen, at the name, at the timestamp, at the email address. Her face went from confusion to denial to this quiet, deep hurt that I recognized all too well. "I trusted him," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "He tucked my kids into bed. He heard me cry in that staff room. And he did this. I'm not showing you this, so you'll feel sorry for me," I said. I'm showing you because he's close to our boys, and he made a choice that put them in danger. Whatever else you feel for him, you need to know who he really is." She closed the laptop, stood up, grabbed her bag. "I'll handle it." From what she told me later, she waited for him in an empty classroom the next morning. He walked in smiling like nothing was wrong, and she locked the door behind them. "How could you?" she asked. He tried to play dumb, then tried to spin it as some twisted act of protection. "I was trying to expose him," he said. "People needed to know who he is. They didn't need to know where my kids go to school," she shot back. "You weren't protecting us, you were trying to win." She left that room with a new kind of clarity, went straight to the principal with the evidence, and within days, Ryan was out under investigation, removed from their lives. That night, she texted me, "Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry I believed it was you." Then we're on the same team now for them. That for me was the real turning point. Not the DNA test, not the court order, not the headline that moment where she decided we were allies, not just two people fighting over the same 3 kids. Over the next months, the visits got longer, less supervised, more normal. I picked them up from school sometimes, standing in line with the other parents like a regular guy who still didn't know how to open the stupid lunchboxes. They slept over at my place, 3 little bodies snoring on a blow-up mattress in my living room, cartoons on the TV, their drawings stuck to my stainless steel fridge with magnets shaped like farm animals. One night after I dropped them off, Julia asked me to stay for a minute. The boys were in their room arguing over who got the top bunk, their voices drifting down the hall, and we sat at her tiny kitchen table with mismatched chairs. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about how long I carried this alone, about how hard I tried to shut you out, and about how much lighter they seem now that you're in their lives. I'm still mad at you. I still have scars from what you did, but I don't want to keep punishing them because of my hurt. I don't want a judge deciding our family's schedule based on whoever has the best lawyer. I want us to walk in there together with a plan we both agree on." I just looked at her, at this woman who had every right to slam every door in my face forever, offering to build a new one instead. "So we ask for joint custody together," she continued, "not you against me, both of us for them. Clear days, clear rules, holidays shared, and a promise that we will not use these boys as a weapon against each other. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said, and for once it wasn't a negotiation tactic. It was just the truth. "I can do that." A few weeks later, we stood side by side in front of the same judge who had once suspended my visits, this time, with a joint parenting plan in our hands. The judge read it, read the updated reports from the social worker who had seen my apartment covered in Legos, read the psychologist's note about how the boys drew pictures now with 4 people instead of 2, and then he signed. Just like that, it was official. One weekend with me, one with her, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I picked them up from school. We split vacations, we text about fevers and lost shoes like any other divorced parents trying not to screw up their kids. It's messy. It's not always pretty, but it's real. Last month, on a warm Saturday, we had a picnic at a little park near Julia's place. Nothing glamorous, patchy grass, rusty swings, a couple of trees. The boys ran ahead with the blanket, arguing about the best spot to put it. Julia carried the food, I carried a cooler, and for once there were no lawyers, no social workers, no cameras, just us. At one point she pulled out a photo album, real paper, plastic sleeves, and showed me a picture of 3 tiny babies lined up on the same hospital bed. "That's you," she teased, pointing at the one with the grumpiest face, and you, and you. I felt something twist in my chest. Grief for the years I missed, and something else I didn't have a word for yet, maybe gratitude that I had been given a chance to at least not miss the rest. As the sun started to drop, the boys took turns on the swing, screaming with that wild kid joy, and Isaiah suddenly yelled, "Dad, push me higher." It slipped out of him so naturally, he didn't even realize what he'd said until Julia and I both looked up. I walked over, put my hands on the chains, and pushed not too high, just enough to make him laugh. "You're not leaving again, right?" he asked over his shoulder. "No, buddy," I said. "I'm here." That's really what this whole story comes down to. Not the money, not the headlines, not who hurt who first, but who shows up when it counts. So if you listened all the way to the end, I honestly want to know what you think. Do you believe someone like me deserves a second chance at being a father after disappearing like that? Or should walking away once mean you never get to walk back in no matter how much you change? Have you seen anything like this in your own life? A parent who came back a step? Parent who did more than the biological one? A situation where the court got it right or completely wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with each other respectfully. Tell me who you think was more wrong, me Julia. Ryan, the system. And if stories like this make you think about justice and forgiveness in a different way, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one, because your reactions, your stories, your honesty, that's what keeps these conversations going.